What's up, guys? I'm Steven.
And I'm Kylie, and you guys have been asking some great questions in the comment section of our recent videos about owning and operating short-term rentals. So we decided to round up a few of them, and we're going to answer 8 of them in this video today.
These topics range from tax deductions to our cancellation policy to whether or not it's a good idea to leave freshly baked bread for guests upon their arrival, all sorts of things.
We do read every single one of your comments, and we try to answer the ones that are a quick answer, but sometimes these questions require a longer explanation or some sort of visual aid, and so we think that a Q&A video every once in a while is a good thing.
Let us know in the comments if you like these Q&A videos, or leave us a comment with a question you may have. It can be about anything, Airbnb, property management, investment property related. We're happy to try and help.
Before we start, we've got to place that disclaimer that anything that we share in this video, all of our videos really, is for general information purposes only and is not to be considered legal or tax advice.
And if you'd be so kind to hit that like button, it'll help spread this video to other hosts that may have the same questions like you guys.
Okay, so the first question is from Kevin, and he asked, can you discuss tax deductions of a full rental versus house hacking individual rooms?
All right, sure. Again, we're not tax experts, and you should always get your tax advice from a pro, but we do have a lot of experience with tax deductions for house hacking. If you're renting individual rooms, you should be able to classify that portion of your house as a business. Measure the square footage of those rooms, and then define what percentage of your overall house that is. So for example, if it's 20% of the square footage of your house, you can then deduct 20% of all the associated expenses, things like mortgage interest, property tax, depreciation, and that list goes on. And then you can also deduct furniture related to setting up that space.
The next question is from Kimberly, and she said, hello again. What are your thoughts on rental arbitrage with a fully furnished unit charging $5K monthly? Is this something you would recommend? So there's kind of a lot to unpack here, and there's also quite a few follow-up questions that we would want to ask before giving our definitive opinion. But in general, rental arbitrage is not something that we've been drawn to just because it doesn't really align with our real estate investing goals. And the basic goal for us has always been to build equity that we can then draw from to purchase another property. But I don't want to downplay the fact that rental arbitrage can be a good way to start out to generate cash to then put towards a down payment.
So we haven't done any arbitrage deals ourselves, just because it's really not something that we've been interested in.
We did manage an arbitrage property for a client. It was this really cool, historic, mid-century Eichler home in Orange County, and we managed that for about a year until their lease was up. One takeaway that we got from that experience was that the owner just didn't really have the same sense of urgency to act on repairs as we typically would with a short-term rental. So that was a little bit frustrating, but maybe that was unique to that owner.
Instead of using arbitrage to get started in our own real estate journey, we chose the house hacking method instead. We purchased a duplex home, and we lived in half while we were renting out the other half. It's sort of a way to live rent-free, basically, because the income that the other unit was generating was paying our mortgage, and we were just saving that for the next property.
Back to Kimberly's question. So she said, what are your thoughts on rental arbitrage with a fully furnished unit charging $5K monthly? So these are the follow-up questions that we would like to ask. What are your projected earnings? So what are you expecting to bring in over the term of that lease, less your expenses and the value of your time? And does that number make sense? And does it align with your goals for generating the cash flow?
The next follow-up question for Kimberly would be, how is it furnished? Is it tastefully done? Is it nice enough and differentiated enough from your competition? Arbitrage on a fully furnished unit would take out a lot of the cost of, the setup and the effort of doing that. But these days you have to be increasingly sort of mindful that there is a lot of competition in most markets, and the sort of blah looking furniture houses and decor just don't get booked as much.
Also, fully furnished means different things to different people. So it's unlikely, I would say, that this house has everything that you need to operate a short-term rental. So does it have linens and towels with spare sets for turnovers? Does it have all of the kitchen amenities that you'd like to have? It sounds like it probably has a good head start, so that's a plus, but just make sure you're looking into that and factor in those costs as well.
And if you haven't checked out our free sample inventory with links to all the products we use, go ahead and go to arrivals.com/inventory, and you can download a copy of your own.
We'll leave a link in the description below as well. So would we recommend that Kimberly take that $5K a month arbitrage deal? Maybe. It depends on your goals, the location, the condition of the house and the furnishings, and the expected cash flow on the unit. We always preach the power of building equity through home ownership, but if that arbitrage deal pencils out, then it might be a good starting point.
Okay, so next question here is from 3D Precision Scanning. They wrote, my wife and I are still working on our lake property, Airbnb, and we have another month or two before it's done. But one thing I was thinking of doing was getting a bread machine, and before the guest shows up, having the bread ready to go, so when they walk in, they get the smell of fresh bread ready to eat. Not sure it's a great idea or not, but something I always liked when visiting my grandparents' house.
I liked this question. At first, I was like, oh, that sounds amazing and delicious and something that I'm sure all of your guests, or at least most of your guests, would really appreciate. But there's also a few things that you should consider before doing something like this. I liked this question because it's the thought process that so many hosts, good hosts that have the guest experience top of mind, which is so great and so important. We're not always thinking about the behind the scenes effort of these complex amenities.
Yeah, the first thing I would consider is just the time involved, and that's your time. Are you going to be available to buy the ingredients and go to the house and get that all set up before every guest? Or if you're not available, who is that person that would do it? We like to make the sort of house turnover and preparation process as streamlined as possible.
We're not trying to hate on your idea. We actually think it's a really good idea. We just want to make sure that you're considering the time and effort that's going to be involved, and does that work with your schedule, your lifestyle?
The key here is like you're thinking about a differentiated experience and a memorable experience for guests. And that's what you should do. Find a way that you can implement those memorable experiences in a sensible way, in a
repeatable way.
Repeatable and efficient way, and then you're good to go. So next here, we've got a couple different people who have asked for copies of our rental agreement, and that would be the agreement that we share with our midterm stay guests, typically 30 nights plus.
We aren't comfortable sharing our exact copy. It's not that we don't want to. We really like sharing free resources with you guys, but this contract just kind of walks that fine line between giving legal advice, and so we're gonna say no to this request, sorry, but we can tell you a good place to start.
A good place to start would be your state's realtor
Department of Real Estate.
Yeah, Realtor Association and forms that they publish.
So just a standard rental contract, and then you can sort of tweak that to your needs.
A few things that you need to cover, again, not legal advice, but make sure you're defining this as a vacation rental and not some permanent rental.
You want to make it clear that this guest will not be establishing residency at the house, that they're just going to be renting it on a temporary basis.
You also want to define your terms on cancellation and any deposits you require, security or damages, and also make sure you cover all your important house rules and what the penalties are for breaking those.
If you do, sort of tweak and draft your own, we would always recommend having your attorney look at it, just making sure that you're safe and you're covered.
All right, so next we have a question from Mark. He said, hi, great channel.
Thanks.
Checked your website, but I didn't see the thermostat you recommended. All right, so there's a couple different thermostats that are on our smart home inventory list. And we went today when we were preparing for this video, just kind of surveyed pricing on those. Things have changed in the last couple months with pricing since we published that video, but I think we stand by our original recommendations. And here are the top three that we would recommend. The first and our favorite is the Emerson Sensi. Couple reasons: it's easy to install, the app is really easy to use, and most importantly, it's easy for guests to use. A good thing for hosts is it enables you to define temperature limits that a guest can't override. So you pick reasonable limits for cooling or heating, and you can set those up remotely.
But the price does seem to have gone up substantially on Amazon. About, 4 or 5 months ago, it was in the $70 range, and now it's like $125. Not terrible, but it's a lot more than it was.
I think most things have gotten more expensive.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Isn't that the truth? The second smart thermostat that we like is the Google Nest, but keep in mind that some models are better than others, and basically you get what you pay for with this one. The cheapest model on Amazon right now is around $120, and we have this one at a couple of the properties, and unfortunately, we've had a lot of issues with user error or people getting confused on how to operate. It's kind of confusing. You have to run your finger around the outside of it to adjust the temperature. It's just not very intuitive for guests, so we end up spending a lot of our time training them how to operate it, or they mess it up, and it's just,
Another thing with that cheapest model is that you can't set temperature limits. So if you really want the Nest, you like the aesthetics, or maybe have other Google smart home equipment, we get it. But spring for the learning thermostat instead of that basic entry-level smart thermostat.
There are some cheaper alternatives out there that we don't have personal experience with. I know Amazon has their own now, and there are various others that probably work fine. If you have a favorite one that we haven't mentioned, tell us about it in the comments and maybe we'll check that one out.
One other thing just to mention is that, we try not to segment ourselves with too many different apps. And so
we're down the Sensi path.
Yeah, we're down the Sensi path, and I don't want 10 different apps for 10 different thermostats. We'll leave a link to all of our favorite smart home equipment in the description below, or you can also just go to arrivals.com/work smarter, not harder.
Okay, next question says, thank you for the information. Do you mind sharing how/where you set your cancellation policy? Absolutely. So to set your cancellation policy on Airbnb, you will want to go to your listing and then click on the policies and rules tab. Then it's the first section here, cancellation policy. So you can go and click edit on the right, and then you'll see all of the different options that you can select for different cancellation policies with different terms.
Yeah, so for our short-term rental properties, we select the moderate option, which is a full refund up until 5 days prior to arrival. We haven't experimented with a moderate or non-refundable option. This is the same terms as the moderate, except there's a 10% discount added for the non-refundable portion. Maybe we should check this out, but in our experience, guests who are canceling within 5 days of their arrival usually are, telling some story where they want a full refund anyway.
They always want a full refund.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, we rarely give out refunds past that 5-day mark. We almost always stick to our cancellation policy. Our typical response is to tell them that they will be receiving a refund in accordance with the cancellation policy on their booking, but that we will relist the dates. And if we do secure a new booking, then we might be able to give them an additional refund. We say might because it's probably going to be at a lower rate than what they had booked at, given that it's a last minute deal.
All right, on to the next one. This is from Value Resources. They said, thanks for sharing such detailed information. We purchased these items, but don't know where to find someone to install them for us. We're in Laguna Niguel, California. Any suggestions? Thanks.
We don't have a handyman to refer you to specifically, but we do have some tips for finding one. We went over this a little bit actually in our video last week with how to find a cleaner, and it's a really similar process. So I would say to start with your realtor or your broker and see if they have any recommendations. They're usually a wealth of information when it comes to service providers for homes. You could also ask a neighbor for a recommendation, or you could make a post on a neighborhood group, like on a local Facebook group or on the Nextdoor app.
All right, the last question for today is from Danique, who asks, for pricing, would you recommend just using Price Labs without paying for it for the free version? Is that something you do so you can maintain control? Did you ever feel overwhelmed mentally with the pricing? For a large portfolio, it can seem overwhelming to have a good handle on the pricing for all of your listings. What we find is once you develop a process and you kind of repeat that process, you become used to it, it's really a manageable task. We have a subscription to Price Labs, but we don't do the automated control of the pricing on the listings. But we spend a lot of time looking at the recommendations and the pricing trends in our markets. The data is helpful to catch demand swings, which may signal an event that you weren't aware of, or if demand is swinging lower, it's a good trigger for you to lower your prices as well. Looking at local hotel pricing can also help survey demand and pricing trends.
We also look at year-over-year data for a sort of baseline, and then we have a comp list for each property to look at what other hosts with comparable listings are charging.
Once this process kind of becomes a routine, you just do it over and over again and you get used to it and you're able to crank through it really quickly. At least that's our experience.
So if it feels overwhelming now, just keep at it. It'll get easier. All right, thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for commenting and engaging with our videos. We love having this be interactive and helping you, so keep them coming.
Yep, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.